Today, I'm gonna make all of y'all unsubscribe to this channel by trashing on Nintendo consoles. But it needs to be said, so sit back, relax, don't unsubscribe to the channel, and let's talk about why Nintendo sucks at making game consoles. What's up guys, Luke back again, and I want to start off by saying I'm not talking about Nintendo as a company. Nintendo has put out some of the best software that I have ever experienced. I mean, really, be honest, when's the last time you picked up a Mario or Zelda game and played it and thought that it was terrible? Probably never. But on the console front, I think there's a lot for us to talk about. So the way this is gonna go for the sake of time is we're only gonna go over the US consoles and their controllers only. Also for the sake of time, this is gonna be a two-part series, so look out for part 2 coming soon. But without further ado, let's get right into it. The first console that we're gonna be going over is, as we all know, the NES.
The birth of the incredible Nintendo Entertainment System, the one to play with.
And I can't go too hard on this console because I believe that home console gaming in the West wouldn't be what it is today if it wasn't for the NES. A vast majority of Americans were done with consoles after Atari let anyone with a powerful enough computer and a premonition to make games for their 2600 system. So the market was flooded with crappy games that nobody wanted, which led to the infamous gaming crash of 1983. So it goes without saying that making a new console in the 80s was a bit of a risky situation, with consumer trust being as low as it was in home console gaming at the time. But Nintendo was very clever with the naming of their console in avoiding the typical video game console branding and just calling it the Nintendo Entertainment System. Just say it again, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Very well done. Whether purposely or not, great name choice. Also, Nintendo implemented the Nintendo Seal of Quality. It was their way of tracking what was being produced for the console and helped make sure that developers were being held to a higher standard. Now, this wasn't perfect. Some companies were able to slip their games through the cracks by overriding the NES's lockout chip, but for the most part, Nintendo had control over what games were going on their system. But this system is not without its flaws. The biggest issue with this console, in my opinion, is its size. This thing is massive. Move over, VHS player. There's a new king in entertainment. It's unnecessary that the system would be this large because if you look inside of it, there's a lot of empty space. Also, after a few years, the system has a hard time making a good connection with the games you insert into it. Nowadays, it's not as big of a deal because with a few very accessible tools and cleaning products and a little patience, even the most amateur of electronic repair guys can replace the pin connector inside and clean the connector on a game cartridge. But back in the day, we had to resort to some pretty odd home remedies to get these systems working correctly. From blowing/spitting to using cards to prop it up in just that right position to make it work again. We did it all, and although it was extremely satisfying to get games working this way, it didn't erase the underlying issue that was attributed to poor design on Nintendo's part.
For Nintendo.
And the next console that we're going to be talking about is the Super Nintendo. Now, the Super Nintendo is probably my second favorite console on this entire list. It's like it just took everything good with the NES and expanded upon it. Better controller with rounded edges, very comfortable. Cartridges are normal size now. Sweet design with average size, better functionality with games, and it had Super Metroid and Castlevania 4. This one gets a pass with me. Awesome console. Next! And And the third console on this list. Oh yeah, the moment we have all been waiting for, the N64. This one is also a little hard for me because back in the day, this console brought me a lot of joy. I remember the first time my brother came to visit, I hadn't seen him in a long time and it was super excited to see him again. Then I found out that he had an N64. Up to that point, I was a Sega kid jamming out on the Genesis day and night, trying to beat those ridiculously hard games of yesteryear like Vector Man and Earthworm Jim. So this was the first time I had seen games in 3D. This was also the first time I remember walking into a used game store. I still remember the employee reaching up to the highest point of the display case to bring down NFL Blitz. It was epic. We had so much fun, and soon after, I knew I needed one for myself. A year or so later, I obtained that goal, and the rest is history. GoldenEye, Super Smash Bros., Mario 64, Mario Party, Zelda Ocarina of Time, Gauntlet Legends, and the list goes on and on. Bangers after bangers. But in retrospect, that's what made the N64 good to me. The games. Nowadays, nothing has changed. But with this console, a lot like the other consoles on this list, the greatness starts and ends with the games, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, after all, you can have the best controller, form factor, crystal clear output, etc., but if your games are crap, you got nothing. Just a beautiful console with nothing good to play on it. Panasonic 3DO. But I can't help but feel that these games would be much more enjoyed on other consoles such as the PlayStation and its DualShock controller. I mean, can you imagine playing GoldenEye on a DualShock back in the day? It would have been awesome! Instead, we had to deal with this. I will say this about the N64 controller, it's the first of its kind. It frontiered the analog stick and we couldn't be where we are today without it. But that's where the compliments stop. I mean, who played with this thing and said, "Yep, feels great, it works awesome too"? Also, what is up with the C buttons? What made them decide these tiny little unsatisfying things were a good idea? I mean, you could make the argument that it's for playing fighting games, but good luck playing a fighting game with these little guys. I will say that the A and B buttons don't bother me too much, as well as the Z button, and I'd go a little further and say the Z button is actually very comfortable. But those are the only buttons that get a pass. Congrats, Nintendo, you made a controller with 3 good buttons and a D-pad. That's why most people nowadays go for the Hori N64 controller or something similar like the Tribute 64 or Hyperkin Admiral. Now to the console, and this isn't all bad. I do like the 4 controller ports for 4 players without the need for janky multi-taps like the PS1, which helped encourage developers to make their games 4-player. And I love the clever way they made the power supply. It's not this ungodly size power brick taking up 3 slots on your power strip. It's clean and effective. But that's where the praises turn to poo-poo. So the first thing that's really jacked up, the expansion pack. Oh, really clever, Nintendo. Strong-arm the customer into buying your expansion pack to play the new game they just bought for your system. If you were gonna need more RAM added to the system, couldn't you have just added the RAM into the system to begin with? I'd like to talk to the person who said this was a good idea. It's probably the same guy that said the analog stick was great. The next issue was the choice to go with a cartridge when the whole world was moving to CD-ROM. CD-ROM was rapidly taking over for game consoles because the low cost of production coupled with the ability to fit way more data on a single disc as compared to a cartridge. I remember going over to my friend's house and playing Gran Turismo and being blown away that the game actually had 200 cars. Dude, that's a lot of cars. And like I said, everyone was going with CD-ROM drives. It just made sense, right? Oh, but not Nintendo. Oh no, they're gonna stick with the tried and true cartridge. And that's why we saw 1,300 games released on the PS1 and not even 300 games released on the N64 in North America. Congratulations, Nintendo. Your console sucks. Okay, I think we've ragged on Nintendo enough for today. And let me say once again that I love Nintendo and Nintendo's products, but I think their consoles have not been quite as good as a lot of fanboys would make them out to be, especially in retrospect. A lot of gimmicks and cheap tricks to get more money out of the consumer without really bringing anything more to the table, in my opinion. And this is from the point of view of a person that tends to bounce around from console to console instead of jumping on the bandwagon of a single console brand. But stay tuned because we're gonna have a part 2 to this one. There's just too much gold to not have a part 2. So that was my opinion on the first 3 consoles from Nintendo. But that's enough from me. I'd love to hear from you now. What do you think about the NES, SNES, and N64? Are they your favorite consoles? Or did you grow up with a Sega or PlayStation in your home? I'd love to hear your point of view in the comments section down below. Also, if you got value out of this video, do me a big favor and smash like, as well as subscribe with notifications turned on for more great content like this. And lastly, guys, we do have a Patreon for those of you that are interested in supporting us and don't mind getting some extra content like our behind the scenes videos of our unboxing productions, as well as seeing YouTube videos days or even weeks before they go live. But until next time, guys, Luke from 8-Bit Plus signing out, and I'll see you in the next one. God bless.